Hello guys, welcome back to the MMASucka channel. Now, UFC 300 fight week. Finally, finally we've got UFC 300 fight week. And now I provide you with three things to look out for on the prelims. We know that it's a stat card from top to bottom with Cody Garbrandt, former bantamweight champion, taking on Devison Figueiredo, the former flyweight champion, moving up to bantamweight with a dominant win in his debut as the opening fight on the card. That's certainly one to look out for. That hasn't even made my list. Number one, the first thing to look out for on the UFC 300 prelims, the return of Jiri Prochazka. Now, I think we're forgetting just how good Jiri Prochazka was prior to his loss to Alex Pereira last time out. He's a former champion with one of the most alternative, exciting, crazy styles in the UFC, especially in the higher weight classes. Um, he's got legitimate one punch knockout power, or reverting back to that alternative style, one elbow knockout power. Let's not forget he's got a spinning elbow knockout of Dominic Reyes. I think that was in his second UFC fight. He's only lost once since 2015, and that was to the champion, the man who will be headlining UFC 300, Alex Pereira. And even in that fight, he was winning the fight using his well-rounded mixed martial arts game. He was wrestling his way to a victory seemingly in that first round, and was caught in the second round, and ultimately finished by one of the best stand-up fighters in the world, let alone just in the UFC. Whether that be in the UFC, in PFL, in one championship, kickboxing, Muay Thai, Alex Pereira is one of the best. And Jiri Prochazka hung with him on the feet for quite a while before he was ultimately finished. There was debate about that stoppage from, I think it was referee Mark Goddard. There's a little bit of debate about that stoppage, but it is what it is. He was finished. But like I said, he's only lost once since 2015, and that was to the champion, Alex Pereira. He's really well rounded as well, Jiri Pashka, and he takes on a man who is also very well rounded in Alexander Rakic. Obviously, Rakic's last fight against Jan Blachowicz didn't quite go his way. He suffered a leg injury in that one, and I think that's going to be really important for Jiri Pashka to keep on. He's going to have to keep on taking jabs, taking swipes. Really occupying the mind of Alexander Rakic, but we could very much see the winner of this one potentially in a title shot by the end of the year. We know that Alex Pereira wants a quick turnaround after, if he or when, if you ask Alex Pereira, when he beats Jamahal Hill, he wants that quick turnaround against Magomed Ankalaev in Rio in 3 weeks' time. And then we could see either Jiri Prochazka rematch um or an Alexander Rakic fight, depending on who wins at UFC 300. But the return of Jiri Prochazka is certainly the first thing to look out for on the UFC 300 prelims. Number two, the second thing to look out for is Aljamain Sterling's featherweight debut. Now, this is certainly one that's going under the radar, and it's arguably just due to the sheer amount of superstars that are on UFC 300. Let's not forget, we've got Alex Pereira and Jamahal Hill in the main event. We've got an all-Chinese strawweight bout between Yang Xiaonan and the champion Zhang Weili. We've got the BMF title bout between Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway. We've got Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan in a title eliminator. We've got Bo Nickel and Cody Brundage on the main card. Like I said, we've got Jiri Prochazka, the former champion, who could have easily asked for a rematch and probably may have. There's a good chance that he may have got that rematch against Alexander Rakic, and that's why the return of Aljamain Sterling is going under the radar. It's his featherweight debut. He was always a massive bantamweight. He cut a lot of weight to get down to 135. So don't expect him to look too undersized against Calvin Kattar at UFC 300 in his featherweight debut. Calvin Kattar he's a good, solid, really well-rounded boxer on the feet. What's his ground game like? We haven't seen it all that often, but Aljamain Sterling will certainly test that. And Aljamain Sterling will put a pace on Calvin Kattar. Aljamain Sterling's last 5 fights have been scheduled for 5 rounds. Granted, they haven't all gone 5 rounds. The Petr Yan first fight, the disqualification victory, the TJ Dillashaw fight, and obviously the Sean O'Malley loss haven't gone 5 rounds, but he's still scheduled 4 5 rounds in all 5 of those bouts, expecting to put a pace on Calvin Kattar straight from the off, look to really utilize that overwhelming wrestling game, try and get it to the floor, and try and dominate Calvin Kattar on the deck. He's 9-1 in his last 10 fights, Aljamain Sterling, with his only loss coming to the bantamweight champion, Sean O'Malley. This one is certainly going under the radar, so keep an eye out for the debut, the featherweight debut, sorry, of Aljamain Sterling. And the last, but certainly not least, thing to look out for on the UFC 300 prelims is, of course, the debut of Kayla Harrison. There's so many questions surrounding Kayla Harrison's debut in the UFC. We've seen her do it in the PFL. She's got a 16-1 record with her only loss coming to Larissa Pacheco in 2022. She only had the one fight last year against Aspen Ladd. That was a catch weight of 150 pounds. How much is the cut going to take out of her? The cut down to 130. Let's not forget, she's cutting down to bantamweight for the first time in her career. Her judo days saw her compete up at 71 kilos, which is 100 and I think 78 kilos, which I believe is 171 pounds. Let me just double check that because I don't want to get that wrong. Yeah, so she competed at 78 kilos. 78 kilos in pounds is, yes, 100. So she's pretty much competed at what would be the equivalent to welterweight in the UFC in her judo days. Since then, she's cut down to lightweight more often than not for the PFL. She's then cut down to 150 pounds for her last fight against Aspen Ladd, which is a unanimous decision victory. And only the lowest weight we've ever seen her compete at, whether it be judo or MMA, is featherweight. And that was for her Invicta debut. And I mean, look at how that ended up. She dominated her opponent, sliced her opponent bloody with elbows, and came away with the victory. An extra 10 pounds cutting off that huge frame of Kayla Harrison's. What's that going to look like? How's it going to affect her game? How's it affected her training? Is she just too focused on the cut down to 135 pounds that she doesn't, train actual MMA? She doesn't train a striker. She doesn't train a wrestling as much. Is she just spending too much time on the treadmill trying to shed the weight? We will see on the 12th of April on weigh-ins day what Kayla Harrison looks like and how she performs on the 13th of April at UFC 300. We've seen Jose Aldo do it, cut down to bantamweight when we thought he was a huge featherweight. We've seen Jared Cannonier go from heavyweight down to middleweight and do it well, and now he's an established middleweight. Can Kayla Harrison do it is the first question, and what will she look like after she does it is the second question. But this is the first time, aside from, I think Larissa Pacheco is world class. But this is another challenge in facing another world-class contender. We've seen her top of the world, knocking out Ronda Rousey. We've seen her in multiple title fights against, the Miesha Tates of this world, the Jermaine Durandamy up at featherweight, Amanda Nunes, of course. We've seen her get to the top of the mountain and fall down. We've seen her at the bottom of the mountain and climb back up in Holly Holm. So what will Kayla Harrison look like when she's got that really tough test in Holly Holm, who is a world-class contender, like I say? I think it's probably Kayla Harrison's toughest test to date, but let's not forget that Holly Holm is, she's not getting any younger. I think she's 41 or 42 years old now. Has Father Time caught up with her? Only time, ironically, will tell. But it's a really exciting fight. But we also have to, debate the debut of Kayla Harrison. A big win against Holly Holm will probably see Kayla Harrison get a shot at the bantamweight title. Now, hear me out. The UFC bantamweight division is extremely shallow at the moment. You've got the champion in Raquel Pennington, and then not much else underneath that. You've got Juliana Pena, who's a good speaker. She's got that kind of personality where you either love her or you hate her, but she's not world class. Maya Bueno Silva has just lost to the champion in that vacant title fight last time out. Ketlin Vieira, Irene Aldana, and then you've got Holly Holm ranked number 5. I can see Kayla Harrison getting a title shot with a win at UFC 300 purely because she's a huge name. She brings a different style. She brings a different audience, that PFL audience coming over to the UFC, that judo audience coming over from the UFC. She's got a captivating backstory, and I can really see her getting a title shot with a win over Holly Holm at UFC 300. Whatever happens at UFC 300, we're almost guaranteed to have a multiple talking points coming out of the card, and I cannot wait to break it down on the MMASucka podcast next week. That's all for today's video, guys. I'll be releasing a couple of videos later on in the week. Go and check out the podcast that I dropped earlier on in the week, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.